So a couple of points. First of all, a very, very enchanting idea that my brother pointed out. I've mentioned this many times because I'm really excited about this idea. You have the Karpas. All right, the Karpas is the first. You do Kadesh, Urchas, and you get to the Karpas. And the Karpas is really the first thing that we're doing at the Seder, which is different than we would normally be doing. Because Kadesh, we always make Kiddush. Okay, it's a different nusach. Urchatz, all right, normally we don't wash, but there is a halacha that if you're going to there is a halacha, which a lot of people don't know, that if you have a wet vegetable or a wet fruit, if you don't dry it off, if it's wet, you have to wash like you wash for bread, but you don't make an alatilas yadayim. That halacha exists today. As a matter of fact, if you dip a cracker in your tea, okay, if you dip your cake in your tea or cracker in your tea, you have to wash before you do that. If you're going to if you eat the food wet, then you have to wash. Morning, Ralph. You have to wash without making a bracha. So the fact that we're eating karpas is strange. The fact that we're washing before the karpas is not strange. Now, that's something that has to be done because that's a halacha, because you're having wet fruit. Could somebody take that clock off the wall? It's a broken clock. Why did they put it back up there? It's like when my wife throws something out and I bring it back in the house. You know, that often the men are always bringing it back in. You know, she throws something, I say, wow, look, I found the chair. It's really good. It's just missing one leg. I put that there. Put it back out there now. Or once in a while, I'll actually find something out there that she didn't put out there. And I'll say, hey, I got a really nice bookcase. Yes, get that thing out of here now. Rarely, the man, the wife throws it out and resurfaces in the house. Yeah, there's that old rusty bicycle tire. You never know when we're going to need it, in case we get a rusty bicycle that's missing a tire. So the karpas is what do you call it? It's a strange thing that we, on the one hand, we have to, what do you call it? We wash, because that's a halacha that you have to wash. That's a halacha that you have to wash. Then you dip in the car. Okay, now, there are two ideas here. Idea number one, I don't remember did we mention this last time, where we find the word karpas in the Chumash? Did we speak about that? Where do you find the word karpas in Chumash? Where do you find the word karpas anywhere in Tanakh? So we read it on Purim. Achashverosh tapestry. It says chur karpas utcheles. Right? Okay, it's a material. Karpas is a material. It's also a vegetable. So sometimes some people eat celery, some people eat carrots, some eat potatoes, whatever it is. You dip it in, then you eat less than a kazayas. Less than a kazayas is not very much. It's about 2 bites, 2 little bites. Yeah, that just reminds you exactly how hungry you actually are, right? And when you dip in the karpas, you dip the celery in the salt water, and never has celery and salt water tasted so delectable. Right? That's why I always say, don't go to the Seder famished. Don't go to starving into the Seder, because you're just going to be hungrier. So the karpas is actually, the karpas, sit, Yitzhak Shlomo. Sit. The karpas is actually, okay, now, it's an appetizer. So there are two ideas here. Yaakov Avinu, when he gave Yosef the Ksones Pasim, could we put on the air conditioning in here? It is kind of hot in here. There's 0 air. And watch this. The air conditioner here that's closer to you. Okay, yeah, that's nearer and dearer to my heart, as long as it's not hot. Yeah. You never know with these things. So thank you. I can feel it already. That's why I didn't have that. The Yaakov Avinu, when he gives Yosef the Ksones Pasim. So the Ksones Pasim, Rashi brings down, what material was the Ksones Pasim? It's apparently some sort of very, very expensive, fancy silk material. Rashi in Chumash refers to it as karpas. Interesting? What a coincidence. It's a material. Like Achashverosh had obviously expensive tapestries and expensive whatever it was. It's a material. What's remarkable here is that the Gemara in Shabbos says a man should never favor one son over any of the others. Because as a result of 2 sellas is a certain amount of material that Yaakov Avinu favored Yosef with, the entire thing spiraled, and they ended up going down to Mitzrayim. So Yaakov Avinu favored Yosef with Karpas, and that brought them down to Mitzrayim. So I have a sneaking suspicion that the reason we start at the Seder, the very first thing that we do that's out of the ordinary to Seder is Karpas, is to show Karpas took us down to Mitzrayim, and on the night that we celebrate coming out of Mitzrayim, we start off with Karpas. Very interesting. It can't be a coincidence. No coincidence. Obviously, it's something as being. It can't be a coincidence. But there's a deeper idea here. What was Yaakov Avinu? What was he taken to task for? Because he favored one son over the other sons. What happens at the Seder? What's the big theme of the night? The 4 sons. You got 4 sons. You got the Chacham, the Rasha, the Tam, the Sheino Yodeh. The father's got 4 sons. Well, as a father, who do you think it's easiest to favor? You got the Chacham, the precocious son who's interested in all the little details. And you got that cynical Rasha son. Now, which son do you think that you're going to be more interested in dealing with? Right? So the Torah, I believe, my brother told me, and I think that he's 100% right. It's a reminder at the beginning of the Seder to the father. You, the father, remember what happened as a result of Karpas. Remember what happened as a result. That's the whole reason we're even sitting at a Seder, celebrating that we got out of Mitzrayim, because there was once a father who favored a son. Don't you make the same mistake. And frankly, as a parent, I happen to have 4 sons, but as a parent, it's very easy to favor the one who is a little bit more cooperative and the one who's a little smarter, the one who's more interested. It's very easy. That's the human nature, and that we're being reminded. Listen, it's a Seder. They're all there. Listen, they always ask about the Rasha son. If he's such a Rasha, so what's he doing at the Seder? You got better ways to spend your. You want to have a good time? There are better ways to have a good time than to go sit and listen to your father or your grandpa expound about Mitzias Mitzrayim. You could be in a bar. You could be having a good time somewhere. What are you doing at the Seder? That means there is a certain connection. And if you look, what's remarkable, if you look at the commentaries on the Haggadahs, when it comes to discussing the 4 sons, the one who gets the most attention in the commentaries is the Rasha. And it's very interesting. So that's one idea of the Karpas. One idea of the Karpas is that it's a reminder to the father of what we're doing. This whole evening is about getting out of Egypt. Number 1. Number 2. I think we spoke about this. I was pretty sure. Didn't I ask you if you believe in Mashiach? Remember me? You don't remember me asking you about this? Okay. So I'll ask you now. Do you believe in Mashiach? Do you believe Mashiach's going to come? Yeah, we even sing it all the time. Ani Ma'amin. All the pretty tunes, right? Ani Ma'amin. Yeah, they're wonderful. We all believe in Mashiach, okay. Did any of you check the news this morning? Did any of you check the news, Yeshivat World News, or any of the other science fiction Jewish? Did you check a newspaper? Did you check any? Did you look up some news? Okay, you look up a news station, right? Okay. Did you look when you checked on, when you opened up, when you went to check the news, did you look to see if Mashiach came? No. Something about Ukraine, maybe the security situation, Israel, the government. That's what I look at. I go on the news. I'm looking, I want to see what's happening with the Israeli government. Right? Why didn't I go, I believe in Mashiach. Why didn't I look to see, did Mashiach, didn't come again.
It will be top
again.
You didn't check because it could be the top.
That's somebody else told that to be also, because we'll find out. But if the government falls, I'll find out about that too, right? So it's, so that answer we're going to set aside. Yeah, we'll know about it. Hey, believe me, the things that when my team is playing for the championship, the first thing I check is to see how they did in the playoffs. I'll find out about it, because I know that my brother will be in a bad mood or a good mood. I want to tell you something. When the Cubs were in the World Series. Because I had a friend here in Israel who I was calling for updates. He's an American guy from Chicago also. His kids are all Israeli. So it was 3-1. It was 3-2 in the World Series. Then they played Game 6, and I didn't know what happened. So I call up, and his Israeli kid, answers the phone. I said, do you know what happened to the Cubs? He goes, no. I said, was your father in a good mood this morning when he left or in a bad mood? He said, oh, good mood, very good mood. I said, okay, that means they won. Okay, so we know. That means when you're interested in something, you're going to find out. When you're interested in something, you're going to find out. The answer is there are different levels of belief. When you're at a bus stop, do you believe the bus is going to come? Yeah. And because I believe well, yeah, in Israel it's hard to know. Yeah, it'll come, yeah, but eventually, yeah. I like when they put up the sign, they put up a 2. That means in 2 minutes the bus is going to come. And then the 2 stays up there for about 10 minutes, right? The 2 is up there. And all you're thinking is, I hope these guys time the rest of my life, because, that's a long 2. All right, but you're standing there and you're looking, why? Because you believe he's going to come. You believe he's going to come and it's imminent. There are different levels of belief. We believe, but we're kind of in a state of, you're in a state of complacency. It's difficult to really feel it. But we believe it. We believe the concept. We certainly believe the concept. It's difficult to feel it. Okay. Imagine the Jewish people in Egypt. Fascinating. You have 2, what would seem to be conflicting statements. There's one statement that says they didn't change their names, their clothing, and their language. And that's for 210 years. That's pretty impressive. You had Jews coming to America after the war. By the time they were off the boat, their names were changed. They were already on American names with blue jeans, and their tefillin were overboard. And the last thing, and they certainly weren't speaking Yiddish. They threw it all away very quickly. Yet here they were 210 years in Mitzrayim, and they didn't change. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? 210 years. On the other hand, what does the Gemara say? They were on the 49th level of impurity. How can you end up on the 49th level of impurity if you're so loyal to Judaism? How do you reconcile the 2 statements? Good question, right? What do you say, Shmuel? Any idea? So I'll tell you a fascinating fact. There is a theory behind the fact, but I'll just tell you the fact. The fact is that there are many Israelis who live in Israel and they don't move one iota religiously. They go to Shul on Yom Kippur. The streets of Yerushalayim are desolate on Yom Kippur. They may be at a Pesach Seder. They probably do circumcision. They do Bris Milah. They speak Hebrew. They eat Garinim. They say Yalla Bye. Right? All the Jewish things. Right? They probably eat Sufganiyot on Hanukkah. Then a lot of them leave Israel. They go to either West Germany or Toronto or California or Argentina, and they become Balei Tshuvas. What happened? What happened? Isn't that strange? The answer is that a certain amount of identity could be a blessing and it could be a curse. Because I have an identity here. I have an identity. I'm a Jew. I speak Hebrew. I go to Pesach Seder. What do you want from me? I'm as Jewish as you are. I even go to the Kotel for my son's bar mitzvah and put on a cardboard hat. We have a bar mitzvah and he puts on tefillin. I'm as Jewish as you are. Then they go to West Germany or they go to Ireland. And everybody around them has a very clear identity. And this guy says, well, who am I? And he starts searching. And because he starts searching, he ends up coming back, all the way back. The boomerang goes all the way to the end, and he comes all the way back. That's what the theory is. Whether the fact is for sure true, that there are many who leave Israel and become Balei Tshuvas outside. Israelis, I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Americans. Israelis. The fact is true. The theory is that that's what's happening. You can make your own theory. I'm just telling you that, okay. There's some sort of source. I've never found the source inside. Moshe Rabbeinu showed up, and he redeemed the Jewish people. He said the code word, pakod pakadati. The Redeemer is here. And there's a source somewhere that says he then disappeared for 6 months. I've never seen the source. He left for 6 months. Then he came back 6 months later. There is a source like that. I don't know where. I've never seen the source inside. Question is why? The answer is, do you think that the Jews in Mitzrayim were yearning for a redemption? I'm sure people getting whipped by Egyptians on a hot day building pyramids are probably hoping that this ends. Were they really tapped into a redemption? I'd say as much as we're tapped into Mashiach. So what happens? Moshe Rabbeinu shows up. What happens the next day after Moshe Rabbeinu showed up? Pakod pakadati. What do you think the davening looked like? First of all, how many people think came late to shul that morning? Right? How many people think were talking during davening that morning? How many people do you think did anything wrong? All of a sudden, he's here. You understand? You're in a state, there's a certain state of complacency because of your Jewish identity. Yeah, this is who we are, this is who we're always going to be. We're basically okay, there's no energy. Moshe Rabbeinu shows up, and that creates the yearning for the redemption. And now for 6 months they have time. And I guarantee you, every single morning. Any news? Yeah, well, the Ukrainian. No, I'm talking about that. I'm talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? All of a sudden, nobody's interested in governments and Moshe and Ukrainians. All of a sudden, everything is Moshe Rabbeinu. Is he here? Did anybody see him? Well, I think I saw him. No, that's his brother. He looks just like him. No, I'm not talking about. For 6 months, they're getting woken up, and they can really yearn the redemption. And then the redemption comes. Believe it or don't believe it, the commentary say that's what the Karpas is. The Karpas represents that I'm hungry. I didn't realize how hungry I was. Where's the redemption? The food. Believe it or not. Yeah, the potatoes you eat at the Pesach Seder, the meat, the chicken that you eat at the Pesach Seder, even though it doesn't have any, the halacha is you get any type of meat, the idea of the food is a redemption. It represents, the Karpas represents Moshe Rabbeinu arriving, and the food represents the redemption. And it's there to arouse our hunger. That's why it's a strange appetizer. Most times you go into a restaurant, you have Friday night, you have gefilte fish as the appetizer, then they bring out the main course. Here, they give you an appetizer, a piece of celery, less than a kazayas, and then you basically starve. While your host darshans about the Haggadah, right? And then there's an argument at the table about this and about the 4 sons and who was the button and what did he mean? It's all got a symbolism. None of it happens. None of it is just by accident. It's all part of the idea of arousing, of waking us up to want the ultimate redemption. The ultimate redemption. The same way that they wanted Moshe Rabbeinu, but when he showed up, then they really wanted him. It's a way of making us feel. Imagine if Mashiach would show up today, and then he'd disappear. Imagine how things would look. Just imagine, not one cell phone would go off in Shul tomorrow, I guarantee you. Nobody would have their cell phone wouldn't go off, and nobody would talk Lashon Hara. Now everything would look different, because no woman would try to bring Sefer Torahs to the Kaisel. Yeah, everything would suddenly look. You'd see a lot of people wearing yarmulkes who weren't wearing yarmulkes the day before. Right? All of a sudden things would change, because then we know that it's real and it's tangible. Once it becomes tangible, the yearning increases. Okay. There's a statement that says, "Kol hamar b'lesaper b'yetzias mitzrayim hareza meshubach." We say that in the Haggadah. That anybody, the more you talk about the Exodus, the more praiseworthy you are. Right? That's a statement in the Haggadah. Kol hamar b'lesaper b'yetzias hareza meshubach. So we're all supposed to go. Somebody's talking with, praise ye, praise ye. It means that you're doing a praiseworthy thing. So the standard understanding is, it's like any other mitzvah that you do. You would do a mitzvah, let's do it right. We're really getting into it, really talking about it, really trying to relive it. That's the standard explanation. There's a different explanation. In other words, according to that explanation, it's a mitzvah to talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim a lot. Right? And it is. And it's a very nice thing. And that's what the Seder, by the way, should be. The Seder should be really devoted to focusing on Yetzias Mitzrayim. Tell stories of the Medrash, what it would be like. Imagine what it would be like with 10 plagues. Imagine what the Egyptians would go through with 10 plagues. Imagine. I always think about like what do you call it? The blood. An Egyptian is taking a bath, and all of a sudden it turns to blood. Or a guy's what do you call it? A guy's swimming. A guy's doing an Olympic dive. Right? And as he's on the way down, the water turns red. Just imagine what this would be like. Imagine what it'd be like having lice all day, every day. Or the plague of darkness. You just try to imagine what it's like. Okay, that's the one idea. The other idea is that I don't know what excites you. Like when you were a kid, probably an amusement park. Rafi, you were probably a big amusement park guy, right? Okay, now, what happened when you got back from the amusement park? What happened the night before you went to the amusement park? You couldn't sleep. Especially when you were 11, and now you're going to be 12. You're already 12, so you could get onto that supersonic dinner spinner, which you've never been able to get on before, right? Because now you're old enough to pay to get yourself dizzy and nauseous, right? So you can't wait. you go to, that's my favorite part about the amusement parks. People go on these rides that spin around and then they get on it. Oh, it's good to be on solid earth again. Listen, nobody forced you up there, man. You paid to go there. There was Chicago had the first indoor amusement park in the United States. It was called Old Chicago. I went there with 3 friends. They had the first indoor amusement park, and it was the first. They had what's called the Chicago Loop, which was what's it called? The fast ones. What do they call it? A roller coaster. That actually goes complete 360, then it does 2 360s.
Wow.
Yeah. 3 out of the 4 of us went on it. Yeah. I'll let you guess who didn't, right? I'll let you guess who didn't. I have no desire to be spun upside down fast in a roller coaster. Absolutely zero desire. I'm a demon on the merry-go-round. Right, what do you call it? Especially, I get either the horse or the carriage. I'm just a demon. But a roller coaster is not for me. I think they have one of these. What's it called? The Beast. At Coney Island, they have something called the Beast. Why would I want to do anything with a beast? Right? Why would I do anything with the beast? I like swans. I don't like beasts. So you go to what do you call it? What was it like the next day, Rafi? When he came back from the amusement park?
Not bad.
It wasn't that bad. Oh, yeah. When you were on your way back home from the amusement park, what were you doing? On your way back home from the amusement park, what were you doing? Did you ever travel? Did you ever see a beautiful mountain? What were you doing after you saw it, if that's what your thing is? Right? What were you doing after you saw a good football game? Now we're done. Now we're getting into you saw a good, exciting football game that somebody won in the last minute. Yeah, you talk about it, right? Somebody have to prompt you to talk about it? No, we have to prompt you to be quiet. That's what we have to do. You're talking about it so much, you can't get you to stop talking about it. Why? Because it was exciting. It was real. People, watch girls coming back from a wedding. Well, girls like that all the time. But coming back from a wedding, what she wore and what the napkins looked like and what the plates looked like. The men come back, that food was good. The men talk about the food. The women are talking about what the napkins looked like. Yeah, okay, to each his own. At the end of the day, if you come back from a restaurant, you had a good meal. Oh, that was good. I really took no prisoners. I was really, and you come back talking, describing to everybody what you ate, as if anybody cares. When you're excited about something, you talk spontaneously. When you've experienced it, you don't need somebody to tell you, oh, by the way, it's a mitzvah to talk about the amusement park. When you've really experienced it, you feel you've experienced it, it just comes out by itself. Because the more you talk about it, the more it indicates that you're really feeling it. That's the idea. It's not that it's a mitzvah, it's an indication. It's certainly a mitzvah, but it's also an indication. How much did you tap into what's really going on? That's the idea. Okay. Then you get to the 4 sons. And there's an interesting difference between there's an interesting difference. Where is it? There's a difference between the Chacham and the Rasha. Let me have one of the Haggadahs over there, Raf, thanks. Listen to the very subtle difference. And there's a subtle difference in the answer. I'm going to teach. It's a lesson in life. Okay. The Chacham says, Maha edos ve'hachukim ve'amishpatim asher tziva Hashem Elokeinu eschem. What are all these laws and statutes and decrees and ordinances, however they testify, that Hashem has commanded you? And you should say to him, like the halachas of Pesach, ein maftir nachar Pesach afikomen. That's the question and answer of the Chacham. These are all based on psukim in the Torah, by the way. There are different times the Torah says when your sons ask you, and the Gemara says this is referring to the smart son, this is referring to the Rasha, and so on and so forth. So, what does the Rasha say? The Rasha says, Ma ha'avoda azos lachem. What is this work for you? What is this work you're doing? By the way, there are commentators that say you should never kvetch on Erev Pesach. Boy, this Pesach, this cleaning for Pesach is really rough. Because that's exactly what the Rasha is saying. Ma ha'avoda azos lachem. Well, what is all this stuff? What are all these requirements? What's the difference between the two questions? What's the difference between the two questions that the Chacham and the Rasha are asking? So, there are many commentaries on this, but one of the commentaries says like this. You know, the classic example is the kid who wants to get into the cockpit of a plane. Right? So he walks into the cockpit of a plane and he sees the big green button. He goes, "What does that button do?" By the way, that kid is me. But okay, well, what does that button do? Oh, that button. You mean all the other buttons you got worked out already? That's the only thing you don't know is what that button does? Right? Oh, that button activizes the Energizer jets. Good. Did that help you? You know, what does that button do? Right? The wise son, what did it say? Can you explain to me how does this whole system work? I want to understand the whole system. Give me the books, give me the law, give me the details. I want to understand how an airplane works. By the way, get ready for this. When you have kids, you're going to be asked that question. There are certain questions you got. Daddy, how does a plane stay up in the air? You got to know that. You got to know that. That's one of the questions you're going to be asked. The other one is, why does the water stay in a straw when you put your finger at the top? Now you're going to have an answer for that, right? My answer was always the same, as Zeta, right? Ask my father. That was always and I knew because that's what he always told me when I asked him. So the wise son is asking. Listen how he asks the question. He wants to know all the details because he's interested in the whole system. What does the Russia say? What is all this about? And even more. Not only he's not interested, we'll see that he's not even looking for an answer. We'll see. Number one, the one of the commentaries compares it to, there are two people working in a store. They're working in a fabric store. One guy comes home and he kvetches to his wife. He leaves as soon as the day is over. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he's out the door. And he comes home, fetches, the boss is like this, and the customers are driving me nuts. And what do you call it? And I'm underpaid anyway. They kvetch every day. You have another worker who at 5 o'clock, they lock the door, and he says to the boss, "What kind of fabric is that? What's the best place to order it? Why is this one cost more than that one? Who's the best supplier? What's the difference between the two workers?" There's one detail that you don't know. The second worker is the boss's son. And one day he's going to take over the business. So he's interested in the business. The guy who's getting paid minimum wage, what does he care? He just wants to get out of there. The guy who's the boss's son, I want to know the whole thing. I want to know how it works because one day I'm taking over. The pasuk says, "Bani matem l'Hashem elokechem." You are Hashem's children. You see yourself as Hashem's child. The Father gave us a business to be involved in. I want to know. So what's the answer? After the pay, you give him one corner little detail. After the Korban Pesach, you don't need afikomen. After the Korban Pesach, some obscure technical detail of a halacha, because that's what he wants. I want to know all the technical detail. I want to know everything. That's the chacham. What does the Rasha say? Why do you need all this for? Just give me some of the matzah balls with soup. Yeah, that's good enough. Ritual is good enough. Why does Judaism have to be so hard? Why do you gotta I gotta not turn lights on Shabbos? Why isn't it enough to make kiddush? I make kiddush, I eat cholent, I eat sufganiyot, all the fun stuff. What way? I gotta scrub the walls also for Pesach? I gotta worry about go crawl around the house. I gotta fast on Shavas or B'Tammuz. Right? What's the answer? Look at what the father says. It doesn't mean knock out his teeth. They usually try and blunt his teeth. Blunt his teeth doesn't mean to punch him. Blunt his teeth means to shut him up, pardon the expression. You shut him up, put him in his place. Put him in his place. Look at the father's answer. Ba'avur zeh Hashem asali Hashem b'Mitzrayim. Hashem did this for me when I left out of Egypt. Li v'lo lo. For me and not for him. Ilu hayashem lo yanigal. Had he been there, he wouldn't have gotten out. Isn't that a strange way to answer somebody? He's answering him in third person. He's answering in third person. Had he been there, he wouldn't have gotten out. For me, Hashem would have done it for me, but not for him. Had he been there, he wouldn't have gotten out of Mitzrayim. Isn't that a strange way to answer a person in the third person? Isn't that a strange way to answer him? Right? It's pretty strange. What's the answer to my question? The answer is that the answer is not an answer. The answer to my question is that the answer the Father's giving him was not an answer. Why wasn't it an answer? Why don't he answer him? Because he never asked the question. Remember I told you yesterday about not all questions are in question form? He wasn't asking a question. He's the cynic at the Pesach Seder. So he says to me, hey, what is this all about? You know what the Father's answer is? I turn to everybody else. Because I don't want anybody else to be drawn into his cynicism. And I say, Hashem did this for me, not for him. Had he been there, he wouldn't have even gotten out of Mitzrayim. One of the best ways to answer a cynic is to ignore him. And that's the most frustrating thing in the world, is to be ignored. And if the father doesn't want him, I can't answer. You can't answer somebody who's not asking a question. But I don't want everybody else to be affected by him. So I have to worry about everybody else. So I turn to everybody else. And by the way, this isn't limited to the Pesach Seder. This goes on all the time. When there are cynics around us, we have to strengthen ourselves. Don't worry about the cynic. There's nothing we can do about the cynics. The cynics are going to always be cynical. There's nothing we can do about them. The work for us to do is to worry about everybody else, to worry about the people we could strengthen. People who are cynical, there's nothing you could do. Okay. Then you get the Dayenu. Dayenu, I never liked that tune. Dayenu. We have a different tune at home. I never liked that tune. There are certain tunes that nobody likes. Everybody sings the Happy Birthday to you. Nobody likes that tune. Right? Nobody ever liked it. We only tolerate it because we know we're going to get presents. Right? That's the only reason we tolerate it. Dayenu, I never liked that tune. I don't know who made that up. I never liked it. I even have a different tune for Eishes Chayil. I don't like the standard Eishes Chayil. Eishes Chayil Miyim. So I find out like somebody's. It sounds like somebody's playing the violin badly. That's what it sounds like, right? Ron, true or not true? That's what it sounds. I never was inspired by the tune. What's my tune? Put down $20 on the table, and I'll be glad to sing it. They once asked Julius Erving, was an NBA player. They once asked Dr. J. If he could touch the top of the backboard. He was the first great leaper before Michael Jordan. They once asked him if he could touch the top of the backboard. A newspaper reporter said to him, "Can you touch the top?" He said, "Put a $20 bill up there. We'll all find out." That's what I generally. There's a tune. Do you know? I'll tell you this. I'm not a bad. There's Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh. Okay, that's a standard there. There's another tune for Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh. Da, 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 da. Right, nice tune, right? Yeah. We do that to Eishes Chayil. We did Eishes Chayil Miyim Zavirachayik Miptini Michra. And not only that, my son, who just got married 8 months ago, his wife made him sing it at her father's house. She likes it so much, he had to go sing it by his father-in-law. That's for all the time he gave me a hard time, so now he got his punishment back. At the end of the day, what do you call it? So you have Dayenu. If Hashem would have done this, Dayenu. If he would have done this, Dayenu. If he would have done this, Dayenu. A whole bunch of Dayenus. Question number one. Question number two, what do we do at the end? What's really at the very last? You go to Nirtza, we go to all the songs at the end of the one. Well, who knows one? I know one is Hashem, one is all the way to go. And then you have Chad Gadya. Chad Gadya is the goat. The little what do you call it? The little goat who gets eaten by that, and it hits him, and eventually the angel of death gets the butcher, and God gets the angel of death. So. We were actually once at a Pesach hotel when I was 19. It's the only time my family ever went to a hotel for Pesach. We were at a Pesach hotel in Florida. Must have been 1,000 people in the lunchroom. And we were doing our own Seder. I was 19, my younger brother was 14. Both of us were somewhat out of control. And we got the Chad Gadya, and we just started making all the sounds out loud in the hotel room. The barking sounds and cat sounds and what do you call it? Yeah, a good time was had by all. So the angel of death, I think, was like an AK-47 sound. I'm not sure what it was, but whatever. Okay, so what's going on here is like this. Remember we spoke about the difference between the matzah and the chametz? When you make bread, you take flour and water and you put in a yeast. And you leave it overnight. And the next morning the bread puffs up. Symbolically, what that means is the bread participates in its own development. There are many different explanations of the difference between matzah and chametz. By the way, I have a friend who I just asked him, this guy's a brisker, hardcore. I just asked him how much he pays for his hand matzahs. Right? Now I pay, on an expensive year, I think I paid about 140 shekels a kilo. 440 shekels, that's for 14 matzahs. I made a calculation once here. It came out to 35 cents a bite, which is why it's called poor man's bread. This guy, my son, about 4 years old, is sitting at the Seder. He's crumbling matzah. I say, hey, not that. Yeah, take mommy's jewelry. Do not crumble my matzahs. You know. So what do you call it? This guy pays 360 shekels a kilo for his matzahs. Yeah. 360. That's I asked him how many kilos do you get for Pesach. 4.5 kilos. Do the math, gentlemen. It comes out to about 1,500 shekels. 1,500 shekels. That's my meat order for Pesach. And by the way, sometimes the matzah costs more than the meat. Matzah costs more than the meat. I knew a guy who put a moratorium on his teenagers. He said because they, at Pesach, they got nothing to do with it. They're gnashing they're just gnashing on matzah. The guy's going broke on the matzah. He put a limit on how much matzah they could eat each day. You know, this guy doesn't. This guy 360 shekels. He says no. That's the oneg yontif. Okay. So there are many differences between them aside from price, right? One of the differences is that bread takes part in its own development because you put in the flour, the water, you leave it alone, and then it develops on its own. Matzah, take flour, water, you mix it, flatten it, and throw it into an oven. That means the matzah does not participate in its own development. It's a force from the outside. The reminder on Pesach is the 7 days of Pesach symbolize the 7 decades of an average lifespan. We have a pasuk that says Yamesh Doseinu Bem Shivim Shana V'im Bigvura Shmonim Shana, or 80 years. So the 7 days of Pesach remind us of the 7 decades of a lifetime, and we eat the matzah as a reminder that on Pesach, Yetzias Mitzrayim, everything that happened to the Jewish people was a force from the outside. And not only everything happened to the Jewish people when they left Egypt, ultimately everything happens to us all the time is a force from the outside. That means we are deceived. Sometimes we think that our efforts, what we call hishtadlus, is helping us. Whereas really it's all a force from the outside. Okay, that's the difference between matzah and chametz. That's why we're eating the matzah on Pesach. Everything is coming what we call hashgacha pratis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's intervention. The Dayenus, different people are impressed by different aspects of God's hashgacha. One guy says, wow, the 6-Day War, that was really impressive. Another guy says, the fact that mankind can build an airplane, that's impressive. Somebody else says the fact that what do you call it, that the stock market did something, that's impressive. Everybody's got a different area where they see HaKadosh Baruch Hu running the world. So the Dayenu is really an operator. The Dayenu is that each one of these things, a person can say, Dayenu, for me that's enough. I would see God's hand over here. I see God's hand over here. Because that's ultimately the reminder. That's what we're supposed to be getting out of Pesach. Out of Pesach, the whole thing, we're supposed to come away with it with the sense, God took us out of Egypt. And we say in the Haggadah, had Hashem not taken us out, we'd still be there. You know why we say that? Because we'd still be there. There was zero contribution on the part of the Jews when they left Egypt. They did nothing in order to get out. Nothing. It wasn't like people breaking out of prison, digging under the wall, something. The Jews getting out of Egypt, they got out of Egypt purely because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, boom, 10 plagues, 600,000, 2.5 million people, go home in broad daylight. Had nothing to do with us. That's the force from the outside. That's the matzah. What's Chad Gadya? Chad Gadya is the same thing. In life, you see all sorts of things happening. You see, this happened because of this, and this happened because of this, and that was his response to that. And then you got this whole chain that goes back and forth, till ultimately, what's on top of the chain? HaKadosh Baruch Hu shechted the angel of death. That means, that, you ever see one of these, you take a rope and you shake it, something's happening at the bottom, but there's a whole ripple effect all the way from the top. It's going all the way through all the various things that happen. You know, I got into business with this guy because he recommended it, and the only reason he recommended it is because he quit. And the only reason he quit is because this customer he didn't like. There's a whole chain that goes, that's how I got into the business. Right? There's a whole ripple effect. The ripple effect, God is the reminder, the ripple effect is ultimately coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All right, everybody have a Chag Kosher v'Sameach. Enjoy Pesach.